Graham Williamson talking about Devpi for Teams. Graham works for Penten remotely from Wollongong and enjoys over-engineering his home lab, mountain biking, scuba diving, and snowboarding. Please welcome him to the stage.
Hi, how's it going? So this is my talk, Devpi for Teams. This is my first time presenting at PyCon, or any conference actually. Thanks. So before we get started, I'll just give you a quick little bit of information about myself. So my name is Graham Williamson. I'm based in Wollongong, it was mentioned, and I work remotely for this awesome company called Penten. We won a few awards last year. Check out our website and have a look. I work as a cybersecurity engineer, and my day-to-day is a mix of Python packaging, keeping our CI pipeline statuses all green, building out some automation, and a bit of infrastructure management thrown in there as well. When I moved to Wollongong a couple of years ago, I was looking around for a Python meetup, and there really wasn't one. The commute to Sydney just to attend a meetup for like an hour and a bit, you know, with like an hour and a half on the train or whatever up there or drive, wasn't so appealing. So I started one. It's called Siligong.py. It's associated with a Siligong Valley group of community startup founders, entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs down there, based out of the Gong and the surrounding areas. So if you ever happen to be cruising down past Wollongong Way, and we have a meetup on, it'll be on meetup.com, check it out. And so that's my handle, like on Twitter and GitHub and all that sort of stuff too. There'll be some slides and a little bit of code stuff at the end where you'll be able to check that out when it's up afterwards. So yeah, Penten is a Australian Canberra-based cybersecurity company focused on innovation in secure mobility and cyber deception. For the secure mobility, it provides basically secure remote access to sensitive networks via a USB-sized sort of device. Gives you that high-grade crypto quality assurance on connecting to those networks securely. And for cyber deception is about employing some tricks and traps to delay and confuse attackers and disrupt automated malware. We do a lot of fake generation of content, and we use a bunch of Python to do that. So for the overview, we'll get started from covering on the agenda here. So we just went over who I am, obviously. I'm going to take you through three like user stories almost. So three sort of personas of a type of person who may have a use for Devpi. Some of the problems that they may also have, and where Devpi can be the solution. And we'll go a quick bit of a walkthrough demo on using the actual tool, and then a wrap up. So, excuse me. The first person I want us to talk about is a solo developer. So just think of like a freelance developer. You've got this idea for this, the next biggest thing, the new hotness, if you will. And with all your enthusiasm, you jump straight in and start coding without a care in the world. You have trust in your laptop that you've got. You know that any Python library that you may need will always be available anytime, 24/7. After all, your internet connection was just upgraded to the NBN. The next person is a small team. You know, you're a small shop. You're working as part of a relatively, just a couple of developers. Maybe you've got a couple of internal packages, libraries that you've been working on, and you want to share some features from those libraries across your other products as you're developing. And then we move to the like enterprise shop. You've probably got several teams and things are just bigger. There's more libraries, more repos, more packages, more of basically everything. Probably more downtime, but you'd hope not. So the problems. One of the ones that you're probably going to hit at some point is that the internet. Like, it's not always there all the time. So you may have flaky internet, or you may just be getting straight up like no route to host. And so your connection just totally dies and it's not available. You do a pip install package and it's just not there because you can't see it. So possibly you also may need to work offline. Maybe you're commuting on the train, want to do some work. You know, if you've ever done the commute from Sydney to Wollongong or vice versa, there's like it's an hour and a half and there's about 50 minutes where you have like no internet connection whatsoever. It's pretty crap. I should fix that. Or you could be at like a airport lounge. Maybe you're at a conference trying to get your work done and the internet you may not trust from what's there. So you can look at using this. And failing builds. So everything from the package just totally being yanked off PyPI to a version being pulled after it was released. And that actually happened to us the other day on a package that we had updated our frozen releases, our requirements.txt that we'd frozen, we'd updated it, and the next day that was no longer there. So we had to revert, as easy. Okay, so some of the features of Devpi and where they may help solve some of those problems that you may have in those different stories. So by default, the first thing that you get out of the box with Devpi is it's a PyPI mirror, basically like a transparent proxy cache. Works with pip install, so long as you point your pipconf, which we'll cover off, to that index. And the packages are cached by default for 30 minutes. They're kept for longer, but every 30 minutes it will go ahead and check for any new updates that may have been released and attempt to see if there's any there. So you can also upload your own personal packages to your own personal indexes. So within Devpi, there's a concept of a user, and the users are the people, or the entities within Devpi that own basically indexes that you can create as many as you like. So you can trigger testing of those uploads with the releases as well. And with Tox, it will basically keep a record with the release file for each of the packages every time you upload it and sort of keep those together with the package itself, sort of all self-contained there. And you get, so you end up keeping a historical like documentation of your test results over time for each of your versions and all that sort of stuff. And also what you can end up doing is you can move packages from one index to another, and those test results can come across with it as well. So you know about like the history of the package. So you get some inheritance as well between the indexes. So by default, there, as I mentioned, there was that transparent, the caching mirror. That's owned by the root user inside the Devpi software. And any other index that you create, you don't have to, but you can, if you want to, have it inherit everything from PyPI. So you don't have to update multiple indexes in your pip.conf, or have several search indexes defined in there. You can just have your one that then inherits in whatever structure and way that you want to pull in other indexes, and it creates a nice single blended, like single pane of glass to view, and then be able to just pip install from that. And there's some slight little rules on what it will do in relation to when there's packages with the same name between different indexes as to who wins and stuff. So you can get some high availability as well. There's some real-time replicas to speed up access if you wanted that, or even just sort of the failover server. And you could distribute into different areas if you had remote locations with not as great, even more flaky internet access than where your other location is or whatever, and have them sort of all talk to each other and keep in sync. There's also some JSON status information about the master and the replicas for monitoring if you need that as well. And the other thing that you can also do is import and export your packages out. So if you're upgrading your Devpi server to a new version, you can make sure you get a clean backup of everything. You want to migrate to a new host, all that sort of stuff. And also, I missed one. Disappeared. There's also some Jenkins integration that's inbuilt into the into it as well that can trigger on when there's an uploaded release file, it'll go ahead and run your tox tests and all that sort of stuff for you. So there's also some plugins that you can get to further enhance and extend the functionality of it. There's a web UI that'll give you a click through view and look at your different versions that you have. You can search through package names, you can search through all the metadata that's in your setup CFG, all that sort of usual stuff like when you do a pip search on pypi. And also you can upload all your documentation with it as well, and so it can also search through your documentation as well like that. There's some storage backends. SQLite is the default included storage backend that it has with it, but there's a plugin as well to use Postgres. It's noted as experimental at the moment. It hasn't had rigorous testing in production yet. So you can also lock it down a bit. By default, it's relatively open. If you have access to the server, you can create a user, you can create indexes. When you create the user, you set a password. You can't, however, once those users are created, there's access control lists in place that define who can upload packages to it. It's usually based on the user unless you there's an ACL upload config option for you to set if you needed other users to be able to upload to an index. And so there's some authentication plugins. It's straight username, password, stored in the SQLite basically by default, but you can add an LDAP plugin as well that's available. And for CI, there's the Jenkins plugin that I mentioned before. There's also a GitLab CI authentication plugin as well that you can use. So then you can have your builds basically use your GitLab runner that can then be authenticated to then push and upload packages to PyPI, to Devpi rather. And there's a bunch more, and they can be found there at the Devpi's GitHub website. So here's a quick little bit of a diagram of roughly what it looks like. This is the sort of the top half of it. It was quite big. So basically, this is how we have some of our indexes set up. On the right-hand side, down sort of the bottom, that's sort of where it starts with the user, and the way it sort of flows is like a bit of a J, sort of, and then down and then back up the middle. So basically the yellow box just to the left, user/dev, that's basically that user's personal development index. You can call that whatever you like. And I have noted in there that there's some inherit bases with the arrows pointing to where they actually inherit from. So in this case, that index, basically we have inherit from PyPI directly. Actually, we have changes now because there's some redundancy in there we don't necessarily need. The dev index inherits from shared release, which is our internal release one, and then because that inherits from from PyPI directly, any packages, this diagram just doesn't need that line across the top there. So I'll just go to the next slide. As you basically come down, so that user that was on the right-hand side does a git commit, git push, goes into your repo, whatever. And if you've got some CI automation started up, basically that little blue box there for CI build tests, just representing the fact that there's a process there for that that's triggered, that a pipeline triggers where it clones the repo. And then basically inside that process, we do some basic linting. And then the first thing I basically do is just make a package of it. do virtually nothing else at that point, make a package of it and then upload it to the shared testing index. So that's where that test artifact is being pushed via a devpi upload command. Then basically from there, the next job in the CI runner will trigger a stage in the pipeline will be for the CI unit tests. And the first thing it does is it does a devpi test. And so that will basically grab the package from devpi, and inside that package, how to make that part works, it will automatically run tox and all the test suite for you. And then on success, we do a devpi push where we basically then tell it to say, okay, that version that we just tested that lives on the shared testing index, basically do a byte for byte copy effectively from the index on the server end to the other index, and that's it. And then we then do the same thing at the next stage for the integration tests. We start that stage using the pre-stage index, run the tests. In that case, we pull the package down. We do a manual pull of that because we want to run specific integration tests. And then we then push it from there back up to the staging. We have a bit of a QA gate for some manual stuff that we do as well that will then, once that gate button is pushed, basically does another devpi push from the staging index up to the release. So we have a chunk of that's done automatically, basically on branches and merges and all that sort of stuff. And then the QA gate side of it, everything from there up basically only happens on tags on those shared libraries that we are, that this is in place for. We use across our package. Sweet. So I'm just going to give you a quick little bit of a demo. Hey, that looks right. Good. All right, okay. So if we start off here and getting started with it's relatively simple. The first thing I'm just going to do is create a virtual environment. Oops. All right, and then we just do a pip install, oops, space, Devpi client. I've already got the server installed in here. There's a whole bunch of tutorials already on like how to actually do the setup and lots of stuff. If you just check out the Devpi's docs, it's got that. It's a relatively simple thing, basically. Basically just this Devpi server command with some switches. That's all you need to do, give it a directory, and it will go ahead and start the server for you. From there, you can then just grab the Devpi client, and then away you go, basically, as to where we are right now. Oop. Right, so by default, basically, I have some config still in here. What I'll do straight away is just go ahead and, sorry, this is a little bit offsetting. Right, so first thing you'd want to do is basically just go ahead and issue the use command for the index. You can, for the server, basically, when you do that, you can see there that it says that basically I'm not logged in particular at the moment, and then there are no indexes in use. So then you can have a look and see the different indexes that there are on this server, and in this case there's only one. That's the default one that gets included, the pypi mirror. It's set to non-volatile. It's set to be to not be volatile, so therefore you can't like override it directly or whatever. The other indexes you can set. Pretty sure they've changed it so that you can't actually even change that flag for this index to make it so you can't replace what's in the mirror. But you can upload other things in other index that inherits from it if you wanted to force your own version that was higher than what they have there to make that available. So basically, and if we go ahead, the first thing you probably wanted to look at doing was you can just go ahead and use the root pypi. You can see still not logged in, that doesn't matter, we'll get to that in a second. And basically we've got, we can see that we're using that index now. Now you can just go ahead straight away and do a devpi install, let's say black, and that'll just go ahead, and you can see there it basically references all the your devpi index rather than the pypi and where it is. If you have a look here, oops, there's no default config set, but where we did the devpi use, you can also then do a set cfg, and then it tells you that it's updated those ones there. So your pip-config list has then been updated. By default too, it detects that you're in a virtual environment. So this is the one that it's updated. If you're not in a virtual environment, you do the set cfg, it'll update your pip-conf in your home directory as well. And so now that we've done that, we can then just do a straight pip install, let's say pytest. And then you're pulling from there, and that's pulling basically straight from the caching mirror. So now if we had some, so now you're the single developer and you're wanting to get some work done. So that's all good, helps you with the remote, but you've got some packages, let's say, that you want to test with the super secret password 123. It's the one I use everywhere. So that now creates the user, and we can do an index then. Sorry, I've got to do a devpi login of Graham. Sweet, and you get some creds valid for a certain period of time. Now I can go ahead and create my index in dev. So I've got a package that I just grabbed off the internet. It had a tox file in it, which is one of the things you needed, and you also need to make sure that the tests are packaged as well for this bit to work. So the tox file wasn't actually in the manifest, so this is a local copy I've just sort of updated. Change to using that. Right, so I've now uploaded basically that package to there, and we can go ahead and have a look and see that the package is here. So with the package already uploaded with all the tests, you then go ahead and execute a devpi test. So pull the whole package down, grabs all the uses tox on your local environment to then spin it up. I've got pyenv installed with the multiple interpreters set up in this box, and purposefully I didn't have them all on there. So when we get to the end here in a sec, there will then be a some tests that pass and that fail. Then if we go back here and then refresh, we now have a list of all of our tests where you can then like click in it and sort of review all the results of the command, or it failed or didn't and passed, etc. You also get some history here about like it's being uploaded to there. And now that that bit is done, oops. The version command will give you basically some version information about the plugins as well, if you ever happen to need those. Right, so I'm just going to quickly copy and paste from here. These ones. Oops, no, I need to do this first. So create a new user. Oops. There we go. No, wrong one. Right, so I just pasted in two commands there. Basically, one to create the test, create the release index. One then to just modify a couple of other internal description and title things and lots of stuff there. And next one I'm just going to do, go ahead. I've just created another one there, which is basically the staging index. So if we now go devpi used shared staging, then do devpi upload from where we are. And then if we then come along here and from, to show just the, so here I am basically just pushing, saying from the current index where it doesn't have to be the current index that you're using either. Basically, you're specifying everything that you need. The index, the hyphen index, is the index you want to push from, and the one on the end is where you want to push that package to. You have to specify the specific versions as well in there. And if you do that, then straight 200, we come along to here and refresh this guy. And go back here. Here are the two indexes that we created. Basically, here's the staging one. Come across here, and you can see it was uploaded to staging. And if we go back to our release one, assuming this was a new package that we did, you then have some of that history noted there. Basically, the time that it was uploaded here. So in our case, we have like multiple stages it goes through. It'll show basically the user who did it, all that sort of tracking stuff that you'd want that's all nice and good. So yeah, you have all your documentation gets listed down in here as well too. So that's all very nice. You can go ahead and just pull the package directly, download the different versions if you're uploading wheels as well. You'll grab that. I would highly recommend, if you ever happen to click here, don't click that one. You'll be waiting a while for the page to load because it will pull all, 147,000 or whatever packages are on PyPI and give you that list. It takes a little bit. If you've got that flaky NBN internet connection, you'll be there a while. Cool. So just real quick review. Basically, we just went over the various user types that we had, like the single, the solo developer, the small team shop, and then the enterprise shop. And you had to see with some of those features in relation to how to utilize them, that they would then help overcome some of those problems that we also covered off on, like the flaky internet connection and things like that, working remotely, because you can do all that on your laptop by just starting, for instance. Covered in on what Devpi is, fast, basically PyPI caching server with a whole lot of extra awesome features to help you do your development. And we just did a quick bit of a walkthrough. So Any questions if we have time, but we may not. A couple minutes, yeah. And then the slides, and I have a Vagrant up file that will basically, if you want to get started with it quickly, and that link in a day or so, I'll have a Vagrant file that you can just sort of, with an Ansible play in there, that you can just Vagrant up to get started straight away.
Thanks for the talk. It was really awesome and informative. So I have a bit of a weird use case where I'm taking pypi and I'm forcing it through a bunch of like SSL tunnels and VPNs to get it to devices in the field which are behind weird network conditions that can't get access to pypi normally.
Yep.
Would running my own Devpi instance and having control over the deployment of that be a good solution for like essentially being a full mirror of pypi?
Yeah, so it'll transparently proxy every request that you have, but if you have your requirements.txt, you can like seed it with that beforehand. So if you had a specific location where you wanted just those set of packages, you could totally just do that, throw that up on there, update your pip.conf to point to that too. If you had other ways to do like a site-to-site VPN network type connection, then you could just have it inherit from your one back at home base or whatever in your headquarters type setup.
I think we're all out of time for questions now. So thank you very much, Graham, for your first PyCon AU talk.
Thanks.